All right, welcome everybody. Tonight is a special night. We're doing a webinar on burnout. And you see a lot of energy with me because I'm excited to have Trisha Houghton join us tonight. She's got her bachelor's in psychology and she's doing her master's in substance abuse, and she's really been studying burnout. And her and I started talking probably 4 or 5 months ago, and we started talking about burnout, and we immediately thought we need to bring this to the military transition audience, whether it be just military transition roundtable or the greater military transition audience, because everybody I talk to seems like they're saying, I'm burnt out. And I'm just curious with our audience here, Chris, Scotty, Josh, Matt, Kelly, did you guys feel burned out as you're getting ready to transition, excuse my voice, out of the service and into the civilian time? What's your experience?
Well, if you don't mind, Matt Hamilton, I can tell you that I was med boarded from the Army. I was medically retired.
Okay.
And I had no idea how that process was going to go. So there was definite burnout there. Plus, I was trying to stay engaged in my unit, and I was trying to figure out what my next move was. And it was to the point where it was so quick, I didn't even get a retirement ceremony.
Oh,
so
wow.
there was a lot of burnout there. Yeah, it was just, you're in, you're out. See ya.
Yeah, and that adds to the burnout, adds to the frustration, adds to a lot of things like confidence and stuff, lack of confidence. So
no, you can't kill
I want to say, Matthew, thank you for your service. Thank you for everybody who's here tonight for their service. This is really good. Anybody else?
I was definitely burnt out just trying to figure out what was next. You get well, you tell people that you're getting out of the military, and then they more or less turn their back on you a little bit. They know you're gone, you're out. So you're kind of on your own. And once you get out, I mean, it's a whole different world. You got to start piecing your life together. And I went straight from the Army to doing my bachelor's degree. And they like to say they have transition services and stuff, but you have to figure all that out on your own pretty much. How to use your GI Bill, how to start doing your claims for disability, stuff like that. It's nuts.
Right.
Yeah, it's a challenge. It's a challenge. And we're going to talk a little bit about military transition roundtable and how we're trying to focus in on that exact feeling, Josh. So staying on burnout. Anybody else? How would you define burnout before we kind of jump in and have Trisha talk to us about what that is? And there's no judgment zone right here. It's just this is us participating in a conversation. So Terrence and Chris, if you can come on camera, let's enjoy the conversation. Anybody got any? How would you define burnout?
A little dark for me.
Oh, good. Okay.
Hey, Dan, this is Kelly. Burnout for me is, physically being exhausted, being drained, not sleeping well, emotionally it's anxiety, it's leading into more stress, it's worrying about all these other things contributing to, am I communicating what I'm asking because TAP or everybody else is not answering in the question that I want, or no one knows the answers, and just physically and mentally just getting tired because you're trying to find answers to your questions and no one really has answers. So those just a couple from me.
That's a good one. That's a bunch of good stuff. That wasn't just a couple, that was a lot. Anybody got to the point where in your burnout you started having nightmares?
I don't know if that was necessarily just from burnout, but
I don't know.
Yeah,
right?
there's definitely that moment when you get tired of things and I think you stop caring when you're just that burnt out because you can't anymore. You don't have the energy to.
Yeah. After I transitioned, I got in with Booz Allen Hamilton. And about 4 or 5 years later, I got into some tough situations. I won't talk the specifics, but I was being asked to stay on a team, but they didn't have work for me, so I was working to get on another team. And that one boss came back and said, are you going to leave us? Aren't you going to stay with us? I'll take care of you. And I had no trust, and that was going to happen. And I started waking up in the middle of the night, sweating, and basically in nightmares. And in some respects, kind of goes back to what Kelly was talking about with burnout, because I had been working so hard to try to move forward, but things just weren't there, and I wasn't sleeping well. And so there's a lot of things that can come out of burnout, a lot of signs. And that's where Trisha and I were talking last fall about what is burnout? Are we using it properly? What's causing it? So I guess I've introduced myself. I'm Don Gleason. I'm the president of Military Transition Roundtable. We flipped transition assistance on its head. We're not about giving you a lot of information. We're helping you decipher the information that you get. In fact, I'm going to share a quick slide here. This is kind of us. We do everything virtually. We're a team with accountability. We're your transition board of advisors. When somebody said, when you don't have somebody you can turn to, you feel like you're all alone, Military Transition Roundtable, who's the sponsor of this event tonight, is about bringing you together with 8 to 10 other people. And we talk and we share and we build you into your transition. So we're going to talk a little bit more about what that all entails. But can you imagine having a board of advisors to walk through your transition with? Going through people who are going through, and experts like Matt and I. Matt doesn't have his name up there, but Mr. Military Transition Roundtable. So we both went through it and we help. And Trisha is out there helping others in various ways. And she's going to talk about some of that. So I'm going to turn over. What we're going to do is we're going to go in parts here. I'm going to have Trisha talk a little bit, and then we're going to do some Q&A and discussion. And then we're going to go back to Trisha. And we're going to have some more Q&A. So this is going to be going back and forth. I would think, and Trisha, I didn't ask this question yesterday. If somebody has a question in the middle of your talk, can they interrupt and raise their hand?
Absolutely, please do. I'd
Well,
much rather get the info you guys are needing than just chat at you and not have the question. So for sure, Don.
Yeah, so raise your hand physically or raise your hand in the reaction button. But the recording is for us and is to send to folks who signed up but didn't come for some reason, right? Things happen. Life happens.
Dude,
That's one thing we found out in transition, right? Life happens. So our goal is to try to meet everybody where they're at. So I'm going to turn it over to Trisha. And I think that's the key introduction is Bachelor of Psychology, working on her master's, studying substance abuse, studying burnout, in mental health counseling with folks, helping them through this process to understand burnout. And I think there's some key things here, but let's have the conversation. That's what it's all about. So Trisha, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you for being here today.
Awesome. Thank you, Don. And thank you guys for coming. Most of you are some familiar faces, but some are new. So like I said, my one request is don't just leave me up here chatting at you guys. I want to know your questions. I want to know your thoughts, and much better if it's interactive. So I'm going to share my screen because what I'm about to talk about is, first, we're going to go through burnout, what it is, and what it isn't, because you might be surprised, might not be burnout. So let me share this one. All right. Okay, so anybody know, I'm a big dog lover. If you've been on a one-with-one with me, you've probably definitely heard my shepherd. So anybody want to say or guess what this dog is doing? I mean, the obvious is shaking its head, right? But what's the dog doing?
Getting rid of water off their fur coat, maybe?
Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it has an itchy ear. I know my dog, if it has an ear thing, it'll be shaking his head forever.
True. Yes, that's certainly part of an option. Somebody else spoke.
Get rid of excess energy or stress. I've seen my dog do that.
Yeah, actually, so Matthew's the winner here. The dog's regulating. So this is actually a stress response that dogs do when they are, I mean, honestly, a number of reasons, but basically their built-in mechanism is one of the things they do is shake. Now, I don't know if the dog knows about that or if it doesn't. However, I love to continually learning from dogs into how to treat people, as well as just, another thing that I learned while I was researching new things for you guys to kind of catch the audience. So now what we're going to do is just going to take a look at burnout and share with you kind of very more common symptoms. So can anybody give me a common cause of symptom of burnout? I know Kelly had said some sleep. Dawn had mentioned some nightmares potentially, right? So what else?
Outbursts, emotional outbursts.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely, Joshua. Anything else?
Short-term memory loss.
Yep. Very true.
Changes in your diet, maybe, a lack of appetite.
Yep. Very true. So
Depression, anxiety.
Yeah.
yes, Scotty, absolutely.
I think Kelly hit one too, which is exhaustion. You just feel physically exhausted. It's like you can't. I was doing working with a coaching client today. He's like, I don't think I can make a decision. He just was so overwhelmed.
Yeah.
That's a sign.
So everybody's right. Any other last thoughts before I kind of move on though? However, what you're describing is more of a dysregulated nervous system than it is burnout. So I'm going to share a new screen here, and I like visuals. Ooh. Okay. So burnout is more so in the workplace. So when we're just clarifying real quick what burnout is and kind of its own kind of box, right? It's more so talking about workplace stress. Emotionally exhausted, as you guys have said, more critical, says clients, but also coworkers, fellow soldiers, etc. Little to no work satisfaction, or even life satisfaction to some point. And honestly, you're checked out. And that's something I talk about a lot, but you're not necessarily checked out because you want to be checked out. You're checked out because you just have nothing left. Kind of like what Dawn was saying with, the guy that couldn't make the decision. However, what you guys are describing for me is a dysregulated nervous system. Now, who has heard of this? Anybody? Okay. So basically, as a brief snippet, the reason why I'm here today and teaching about this is because as a crisis worker for over 15 years, my fight, flight, freeze, which is part of your nervous system, got stuck in fight, flight, freeze. Too many, I guess, crises, and we were a mobile unit that went around, and I did not know that this was an issue to even look for. So the difference here is your dysregulated nervous system is not just workplace stress. It is all the life stressors. It's the personal, it's the professional, it's, encompasses all areas of life. Very likely to have with trauma. So people who have had trauma, veterans, more so likely to experience dysregulated nervous system. Increased heart rate. My favorite one up here that honestly was what I would have seen as a huge red flag, but didn't. And the one that actually got me was bone tired. You might want to say, this is my own term here, but I didn't feel like exhaustion did justice to the amount of it, just bone tired. I felt like it was that deep. It's the kind of tired where, you can't just catch up on sleep or sleep in or take it easy for the weekend and feel better. It's just, it almost haunts you. So increased heart rate or heart rate up, heart rate down, easily irritated, that low tolerance kind of mentally, physically, emotionally, and on your family is strain and pain. Overly alert, even nausea, and chronic pain and illness. So the key between these two is that, my apologies. Key between these two is that you're in survival mode in both. But one, again, is more so just in the workplace. The other one is truly systemic. It's affecting all of your body, mind, soul, literally everything. So based on those descriptions, who feels more like now they have potentially a dysregulated nervous system over burnout? Okay, fair enough. You know,
I would,
go ahead.
I would say that at one point in time, that's probably very true.
Okay, fair enough.
But honestly, finding some sense of direction after eating out and figuring out what I wanted to do when I grew up,
Right.
that's actually relieved a lot of that stress. But and talking to you a lot, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Glad to hear it. You know, after mine got stuck, and again, we were told two things in mental health to look out for, and that was make sure you're seeing the therapist yourself, and which I did, and then make sure you were finding a way to lock up kind of your day's stress, which because we had a mobile unit, we didn't necessarily go back to an office or whatever and don't take it home. I did those two things. So when I lost the ability to, whether I was awake or asleep, the long and short of it was I was experiencing, I had to pull over because I just didn't feel like I could get to work, which was all of a 12-minute commute, by the way. After 3 days of feeling like, oh man, I'm just overly tired. Like first day, it's like, okay, it's weird. Second day, it's like, okay, maybe I'm getting sick. Third day, I had to pull over because I was not confident I would make that drive safely. What was happening is that my nervous system was crashing. So from all the fight, flight, freeze, moving seamlessly, supposedly into just going to dinner with family or coming home, it got stuck, and I didn't know that this was even a possibility. So had to quit my job, had to go through a ton of medical things, and this is around 6 years ago now. And since then, have really kind of made it my own mission and feel responsibility to share this knowledge. Yes, Don.
Yeah, can I ask, would it be a proper distinguishing to say burnout is, you said it's in the workplace, so maybe as you're thinking about the end of the day, you're starting to feel as you go home around family, you start to feel less symptoms. Weekends, you start to come way down. But like you said,
Absolutely.
on Sunday night, it starts going back up because it's looking back. But that DRNS, it's kind of always there, right? You can't find relief at home. You can't find relief in volunteering. You can't find relief in anything, even going out and playing sports. Everything just bothers you. Would that be a distinguishing?
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, what kind of, if this helps, right? So burnout, it's feelings, certainly. It is even, you know, we see a lot of emotional aspects because that was kind of, I think one of the first signs is, you know, people in caring professions or frontline workers, they literally just lose capacity to care as much just because they're suffering. When you go as far as dysregulated nervous system, it is a systemic problem, and actually your brain matter has been changed from a greater degree of burnout. So burnout can lead to dysregulated nervous system. And this is what makes this so vital, because we're just post 2020 throwing the word around burnout like that's everything. And what do you do? Does anybody know what do you do for burnout? Does it go away? Do you just wish it away? Like, what do you do? Matthew's shaking his head. Anybody else got a thought?
You know, a lot of people,
I would say
sometimes you just need to take a couple of days off, right? That's sometimes what bosses, hey, you're
Potentially, yep.
Maybe you need to take some time off, but that's not really solving the problem. It just kind of delays it a little bit. Go ahead, Scotty.
So I think I had burnout years and years and years ago. I don't think my transition definitely sounds more like the DNS. Is that so years ago I had burnout, and it was like, hey, you need to take a couple of days, you need to do this. And I had a counselor say, really, just for burnout, they're like, you need to take 2 weeks at a bare minimum, so you have enough time for your brain to detach and relax before it prepares to go back again. And that was just talking burnout. So so yeah, I thought that was interesting.
It is. And anybody else thoughts for just treating burnout?
Do things you like to do.
Yeah.
Take some breaks.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Okay. All this is true. You know, I think the number one, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. Does the constant, it's all about the PDA, right? The iPhone and you can't get away now with email. I remember back in the 80s when I first started, you went away at 8:30, unless they called you at home. There was no emails, no phone numbers, no
Right.
phone. You could walk outside and you're away from the phone, you go for a walk in the woods and you're away. But now you can't.
Oh, yeah.
It's that constant, even if they don't call you, it's that
Right.
constant feel they can.
Right.
That just,
Yeah.
it just adds to it. So I think maybe where Scotty's going 2 weeks off, but it's 2 weeks away from all of that as well.
Yeah.
Could that be?
Absolutely. And certainly, if we're talking burnout alone, right? Meaning mostly career oriented, a lot of career stress, a lot of symptoms because of your career. But, basically the remedy or something that would greatly help that is you're going to do just a quick assessment of stressors. You're going to say, what is absolutely vital that I must continue to put, food on the table or just, serve my family or just myself? And what can I cut out? Because if you don't cut out, you're going to continue to burn, just very honestly. And if you continue to burn, well, you're going to get dysregulated. And so burnout over time, untreated, added on by things like a pandemic that's random. And I mean, stress of the world, family, everything else, right? That leads to complete dysregulation. So here is kind of the signs, symptoms of our dysregulated nervous system. Anybody? How many? I'm curious. On this list, so we've got relationship strain, all relationships, work and home. So again, this is that differentiation there between not just work. Lack of interest in usual things. Everything takes way too much effort if you have a dysregulated nervous system. It isn't even a matter of if you like to do it, because right now what you like to do is sleep. What you crave to do is rest and not do. However, you've got brain fog, memory issues, again, that irritable despite your best efforts not to be, little to no sleep. First thing I ask people about when they come to work with me for me to reset their system is how much sleep, what's your sleep like? Because sleep and burnout, yes, gets crummy, crappy, etc. Sleep and dysregulation. So when I had my crash, I lost that ability to control if I was awake or asleep. My body was giving me all the adrenaline and cortisol in the daytime, and it was giving me, in the nighttime, it was giving me all the cortisol and adrenaline in the nighttime, which kept me awake, messed up all my sleep cycles, etc. And then it didn't give me what I needed during the day, so I was completely zonked. Elevated heart rate, things that I've said, that bone tired piece, and really the option here that you're left to do is shut down. Does that resonate with anyone? Better understanding? Yeah. So, again, go ahead, Don.
Sorry, Trish. Brian brought up a point in the chat, and that is, it sounds like TBI, traumatic brain injury.
Yeah. So, yep, absolutely. So, again, as I, said, the likely piece that constitutes, especially since I'm focusing on veterans tonight, right, is that trauma piece. Something that differentiates and leads to a dysregulated nervous system is trauma. And that's across the board. And certainly whether you have worked for, oh man, I totally spaced my thought. This is real time.
Is that burnout or is that?
I think that's just a long day there, Don. But anyhow, so trauma was the top. Trauma over a long period of time develops into a burned out state, or dysregulated state. It moves through burnout. It gets to a cellular level as well. I debated doing some of the breaking down the nervous system and the brain and the parasympathetic nervous system. And I thought maybe we could have a part 2 if we want one, but let's stick with the basics for now. And so what I want to focus on you guys as you're transitioning or you're already transitioned out is this piece of what do I do? Because again, the difficulty with the topic of burnout is, number one, sure, sometimes it is just burnout. You take a step back, you assess your life, you say, you meet with your partner and you say, what can I do that's less? Because if I don't do less, there will not be enough of me because I will be basically shut down. And that's what you're forced to do. So that's a step back from work, do what you can. I know not everybody can afford to do that. So again, then do what you can there. And if you can't, there's got to be somewhere you can trim, right? So search hard. Again, I'm a person that will help you with that. But if it is a dysregulated nervous system, and here's the cycle, we don't think there's really much to do, or we say, if we're in burnout, we say, but what can I do? I got to put food on the table. I got to keep going. Like Trisha, I can't step away from any of this. Right. Okay. And I get that. However, if you continue, you will get to a point to where you're mentally, physically, emotionally, relationally just shocked. You're irritable. Yeah, done.
Does the potential burnout to DRNS, to depression, to potential suicide, if you don't get yourself out of it, doesn't have to be always, right?
Right.
It's different, but there's a path
Yes.
to hopelessness,
Yes.
to I'll be better off out of this.
Yeah. And
Is
you know,
there a linkage there?
so I'm actually working on a model of suicide prevention that uses these things I'm sharing with you guys as a way to prevent and stop, hopefully stop, right, soldier suicide. Because this is the thought process. And I remember like it was yesterday, driving and getting crashed and not being able to, you know, waking up in a chair, and I'd been asleep for hours. I had no clue. I mean, it was extremely wild. And I had mental health issues, physical health issues. I was, you know, mine got to where, and this is where our careers are similar. The military, the reason why some of those things you learned in the military especially work against you guys is because you were trained from the start of boot camp to tune your body out. Your body's a machine, right? It's mental, right? Just power through. Don't ask questions, just laser focus, push, 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 harder, faster, stronger. Now that is necessary, and that absolutely serves you in the military.
Yeah.
However, that's about the only place it serves you to that level of severity. The rest of your life is going to require you to tune in. It's going to require you to tune back up your volume and say, does something hurt, right? Where's tension? Where's pain? Am I mentally okay? Am I physically well? And usually, as in the transition space, the people that I work with and allow me to kind of come in and say, you know, let's start with the symptoms, and your sleep's one of them. Yeah, I love it, Scotty. Thank you. Compartmentalization. Absolutely. So again, there's a lot of things specific to military culture that work against you. However, one thing that I do, one thing that I'll get to is to tune. How do you tune back in? Because again, in my job, I was never able to serve, had too many health issues. I was a liability. However, I did crisis work, which also, if you're a crisis responder, you don't get to tune in and go, wow, my heart's racing, or I'm really starting to sweat, or, oh man, you know, I don't feel so great. No, you tune down. Because again, in that moment, in that instance, that's what the body requires you to do. The job requires you to do, because your body's doing one job, and that's to make sure you stay alive. And if you have to tune it out to stay alive, well, you'll do it. So the danger becomes, how do you intervene before it gets to full-fledged dysregulation and you have a crash, like myself? There are different levels to affect. So right now, kind of like reminds me of Dawn when we started saying, you know, who's having the nightmares? Who's at that point? That's way more than burnout. That is 100% dysregulation. It's also other things. Symptoms overlap, and that's the tricky beast of this thing, right? Is it overlaps with mental health, physical health, PTSD, PTS, all the Ds, right? Just all the things. And it's extremely overwhelming. And then you guys are tossed into this transition space, getting equally overwhelming information that is confusing, that is chaotic at best, and hopeful somewhat. So yeah. So any questions? Yes, Don.
I was going to ask if we could ask a question to the audience, and where you're
Listen.
going is you're getting to the area where you said we've got to separate things, but in the military culture, it's always take it on, do it,
Mhm.
put it in your rucksack and carry it, and you're going to get through it. But it just feels like it's going on. Who's had a success or a failure with trying to bring that up to leadership and saying, I've got to take a break. I've got to shed some things, right? We say it all the time. We as commanders always got the training that we had to be sensitive, but it was always do more with less, right? It was never about slowing down, taking a break. I remember wing commander when I was a captain, he said, after this 2 weeks, we're going to slow down. Then we come back to the next commander's call and says, well, it didn't really slow down, but the next, it never came. So who's had some success saying, I need to slow down a little bit? Any lessons you guys have?
Well, who even feels like they say they could? Like, I just want, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. So actually, I've noticed a big difference. I had multiple careers while I was in the military. My first career field was very much that mindset. You just keep pushing through like nonstop. There's no, you could be dying and you're going to still work. You're not going to say anything. And no to say anything. Nothing's going to change. Now, later on in my second career field, it was very much the opposite, where that was still, a lot of people still have that ingrained in them just from being in the military. But it has become a lot more, I guess, socially acceptable to announce, or not necessarily announce, but like at least signal, hey, I'm not okay right now. I need a moment. But I think that was very specific to my career field in intelligence, where they were very aware of like the stress that it put on people's, mental state, having to deal with some really crazy stuff on a daily basis. So it was still really uncomfortable for a lot of people to, just come forward and say, hey, I'm not okay. I'm burnt out, or I'm suffering from something, or something's wrong. And it's hard for people to want to like even just admit to that, just because it's, it's like a part of you. So you kind of feel like, hey, maybe I don't even want this to change, but that could just be you being used to being miserable,
Yeah.
But I mean, I think I had good results talking mostly with some of the people that I dealt with, because it was taken very seriously. So I think it's really a culture thing too. However the culture is around you, whether you're going to be able to feel comfortable getting that kind of help.
Terrence, if you don't mind real quick, I got to agree with you, man. I was a PSYOPer when I ended the Army, but I first started out as a Cav Scout, which, go ahead and make fun of them, but either way. In the combat arms world, it was, if you were broke, you were weak. But once I got to the special operations community, my commander was actually pretty good about making us take breaks when he saw it. Like he had to force me to kind of step back when I was getting medically retired, and made me push off some of my responsibilities, because he could see it, but I couldn't. You know what I mean? But it comes down to leadership.
Absolutely.
It really does.
Yeah, that's a big part that I.
Yeah.
Sorry,
and
honest. Did I cut you off, Terrence?
Oh, no, you're fine.
Okay, go ahead,
My bad.
Trisha.
Yeah, you're good. So honestly, I developed this approach because I'm quite nervous about our future leaders. And what I noticed was like what happened with me once I found out, because I thought, okay, the veterans better know this, because I asked my colleagues, and I had literally hoped and prayed. I just really missed the main ticket, like what to notice, and that everybody else knew, because then they would know and prevent this from happening, because it is preventable largely. Stress is not preventable. Burnout to some degree is not preventable. However, getting worse is. And so basically, I decided not only were the veterans and you guys in great need of this information, because like I said, that culture just builds you into this machine. However, CEOs, business executives, leadership as a whole, same thing. And I was observing there is low quality of life, low leadership going on. And well, why is that? Well, if somebody's just barely getting through their day and they're just check marking, And to some extent, that's not their fault, because most of them don't know what we're talking about now, a dysregulated nervous system, that it's deeper, right? Because burnout over time changes your brain matter and moves into dysregulation. So what I put in the chat to Brian talks about a TBI. It is a type of kind of injury to the brain, which again, we can circle back to. It's a deeper topic, but I'll leave it there for now. But the model was to teach leaders, and what I do is I train leaders to recognize these signs and symptoms. Let me, if they will, come in, train and teach what the symptoms are, a lot of like what we're doing here and what can be done, because the great news is you can reset your system. This is not I have to say, well, good luck, Matthew. Here's a pill and like work up some coping skills and like, it'll be okay. No, but it can be reset with a holistic approach. And here was a screen I wanted to.
Before you go to symptoms, can I do a kind of a commercial break here?
Oh, 100%.
One thing we're talking about is burnout, and we're talking about dysregulated nervous system, and we're talking about how it comes out, right? And one thing we found, Matt and I, as we were going through talking about transition, we were supporting folks for a number of years, and we found that people, and the comments came out earlier, you feel lonely during transition. You feel like you're all alone. You feel like you're different. If you're not zeroing in on things, you feel like you're the only one. So when I say earlier that we flipped transition, what we did is, instead of bringing people together for a day, a couple days, a week of training, what we do is we bring teams together. You can see it in the top left. This is an actual picture of a cohort. We do everything in Military Transition Roundtable virtually. We started literally the week that everything shut down with COVID almost 3 years ago, so 35 months ago. But we bring people together, and just like we're doing here, we have conversations. We pick a topic and we dig into it, and we've helped somebody who's struggling with a thought, an idea. Which resume format do I use? How do I connect with more people in networking? How do I have a conversation with my spouse about where we're going to go, because I don't like the way they're going? How do I have a conversation with my boss, because I'm not getting time off to focus in on my transition? I'm 3 months away. All these things that come up. You have a team, like when I say a board of advisors, that's what it's about. And we really kind of focus on a path of 3 things. That top right, what's next? Where are you? What do you want to do? It's not what can you do, it's what job can I take for the best money and stuff. It's what do you want to do? I always go back to my 5th grade. I knew at 5th grade I wanted to work in environmental, and that drove me. So I sit down with people, we go through skills and experiences and emotions and what really drives somebody. And the importance of that, going to the bottom left, is the second step is validating that in terms of what things are available. It's networking, informational conversation. What's it like in those environments? Do I really want to do that? And then we talk about bottom right, selling yourself, selling your value. How do I get how I'm different out? And I show LinkedIn on the top because Matt that's a book Matt has written. He's written several books on LinkedIn. He speaks internationally on LinkedIn and helps people really develop their profile and network using LinkedIn, how to make connections, how to start relationships. And he's taken all of our students that next piece. And I work with them on resumes, because being with Booz Allen, I hired over 200 people. I interviewed probably several thousand and saw their resumes. So got a real feel of what works and what doesn't. But we bring that back to the core of the mastermind, which is that roundtable, which is top left. And if anybody's interested in learning more about that, we would love to talk to you about it. But that's why we're out here trying to sponsor conversations like this, because we want to have these conversations about what's happening. And we see people being burnt out come out of the service and how that impacts them, and sometimes just taking 100 days. I had a buddy, he wanted 100 days of golf, and that's what he did in between. But did that really solve the burnout? Maybe, maybe not. So this is something, this is a great conversation. So my commercial message is over. I just want to talk a little bit about MTR as the sponsor of this event. So back to you, Trisha. Let's get into the symptoms of this.
Yeah, so what I wanted to briefly share and show is, oh, there it is this wonderful screen. Ooh, maybe not. Okay. Nope, that would not be it. Hi guys. Lost it here. Okay, so while
Looks like a nice
I'm
spreadsheet,
finding
huh?
it. Oh, there we go. There we go. Okay. So, reason kind of a lot, as I see in the chat, right? We're talking about PTSD, some questions about TBIs and more likely. So the reason why this is particularly important for veterans is my TNT message, trauma and training, which I just covered, right? So you were trained to tune it out. The rest of life, though, you got to tune in. I've recently encountered some SOF guys who were trained and are trying to be trained a little bit about this, but not exactly in this way, and not in a prevention piece, not in a reset piece. But a dysregulated, as I put under here, dysregulated nervous system can manifest as appearing shut down, lethargic, out of it, or oppositely stuck in or the go in the on position while trying to minimize feelings of internal chaos. Anybody resonate with that one?
Yes.
Yeah. It feels so opposite, right? Because you're like anxious, exhausted, and you're fighting irritation, but you simultaneously care. You know, you go home to your family, which is what you want, or so you think, but you've got nothing left, and that's not your fault. So let's see. I'm checking the side here. Wasn't specific. Yeah. Absolutely. So let's go to Don. What did you ask me? This one.
Earlier?
Yeah. Did you have a question? Did I just make that up?
Yeah, not just now.
Okay.
I got tons of questions in my head, but
I know.
I'm trying not
here's
to
part.
dominate.
Right. So here's part of the problem. Cortisol is the stress hormone. Anybody heard of cortisol? Anybody not heard of cortisol? Let me do it that way. Okay, cool. So on the left, you've got a regulated system. So you got your cortisol and there's stress. So when stress goes up, cortisol goes up, but it comes back down. And as you see, it kind of goes up, down, up, down. It's regulating. The system's working. The nervous system is saying, okay, we need fight, flight. Okay, now we don't. Let's chill. And on repeat. However, when your system becomes dysregulated, as stress goes up, cortisol goes up, but it doesn't come back down. It does not reset. And it just continues to go in this upward trend, causing these chaotic feelings, these opposite emotions, this lack of just ability for so many things that's not your fault. Does that make sense? Any questions there? No. Okay, so what do we do?
Does stress by itself like cause ulcers and other physical ailments like with your stomach? And
absolutely.
Is learning to deal with ulcers and that stress helpful in learning to deal with?
So here's the thought. Let me put this one back up because I love a good visual.
The reason I ask is I had a real problem with peptic ulcers in 10th grade, school and everything.
Yeah.
And I mean, and my dad really taught me how to relax and control it. And I periodically through my career felt them coming back. So I would apply those principles. And I felt like absolutely. Kind of that stress pulled it back down again. Yes, and it does. And so basically, here's the problem. Don, there's nothing wrong with it. You know, again, stress is normal. Stress is even helpful. You know, when we're stressed, our body's kicking into gear the things we need it to. The cortisol, the adrenaline, the norepinephrine, and on we go. However, chronic stress matched with trauma, matched with family, matched with job burnout leads to dysregulation. So if you think of kind of like Don was saying, is it okay to kind of address the stomach? Well, yes, absolutely. However, you're going to then have a stomach ache that probably gets better with some medicine, but returns. And it would be like trying to put out this fire. Is this possible? Is one person able to fix this? No. No, it's attacking your work. It's attacking your sleep.
It's attacking your mental health, your physical health, your family. You get the picture. This is honestly, and searching for these pictures and messages, I thought, there's no way I can better describe this than this. So similarly, you could what I call kind of symptom management. So for the stomach, certainly that could be one aspect you need to get checked out. Now, I do a holistic reset. So I'm going to look at each area of your life and say, okay, what are your symptoms? What are your signs? And then I create a reset for you, helping your mental health, helping your physical health. What you eat is a huge piece of this. I literally and figuratively ate my words, because when I had my nervous system get stuck, my doctor said, okay, and Trisha, by the way, I want you to try this diet. And I thought, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? Okay, right, fine. I didn't think I ate super unhealthy, but I had no idea the amount of regulation foods can play in your life. And since then, in the past year, I've finished and added a whole nutritionist certification so that I can create meals specifically, diet specifically to your symptoms, right? And oh my goodness, does it work? Is it hard? Yes. But is it as hard as living like you've been living? No. So again, it does take work.
Any change of habit is hard.
Exactly.
It's almost easier to stay where you're at, but you know that staying where you're at is good. So you got to realize that I got to get out of this, right? I've got to make
a lot of it, the problem here, Dawn, is it's the devil we know, right? And that's like with any change. A lot of people want change, and then you get an opportunity and you're like, oh, I'm not so sure. Right? Because, but you want it, right? Well, yeah, but what if, right? And then we go through all that stuff. So there's this tug, push, pull with what we want, what we need. And it's no different than this. You've learned to survive feeling like this. Mm-hmm. However, it is a survival. It's not thriving. It's not life. It's not living.
Yeah, let's
see
if there's got any questions. If you got a question for the group, let's pause for a second and see if we're talking symptoms of burnout, symptoms of dysregulated nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
I know we've all gone through stuff like this. We've all struggled with it. There's that quote that says, if you don't deal with it now, your system's going to deal with you later. And it's so true. Anybody got any questions, thoughts?
Yeah, I got some thoughts. What I learned in the last part of my military career was to take time off to go to the gym. And like once a week, I used to play 9 holes of golf by myself. It just recalibrated. And it was just kind of a natural thing to do those kind of things. It's not the normal military way, but I had bosses that understood I had a very stressful job dealing with the media, dealing with community leaders. And when time permitted, I took time off and I would spend more time at the gym, but I could look at my calculation, say, I'm spending 50 hours a week. What's an extra half an hour at lunch to deal with all these stressors? So yeah, I was well schooled in that.
Good for you.
Thanks.
Anybody else similar like that? Thanks for sharing, Matt. And physical activity is a great way to deal with stress.
It is.
I think what helped me is learning my personality and being more introverted. So I just needed to take time by myself alone to recharge and dig through all that stuff before I actually went out and took care of other people.
It's a huge one.
Yeah. One of the things that I noticed was a lot of times you don't even notice it until you start seeing like some of the symptoms listed out. The big one for me was when people started listing out like the flight freeze responses, and you don't even realize that you're just stuck in those until you're like kind of pointed out, and then you're like, oh, holy crap, I am doing this the whole time. And it, stress affects everybody differently, so everybody might have a different reaction at some point, but some of the symptoms are just like, they need to be pointed out to you, honestly.
Right.
Well, and again, checklist, we go check.
Yeah.
Check. No wonder I don't feel right here. Holy cow. Right? I had a V8. Whoa.
Yeah. So, and that's very common kind of, Terrence, is, you know, again, if we just think it's burnout, well, that's just like, we feel like we're stuck. Like, this is just life now. I don't know if anybody else felt like that or has felt like that, but a lot of times we just resign to, well, I guess I'm just miserable. Like, I guess this is just coping, because this informational piece is not out there yet. Now, why is the question I have in what I do. This is now what I do full time. I'm a contractor. I do resetting and trainings and education and collaborate, because I don't want this to happen to you guys. I don't want it to, you know, honestly, if it gets to a point where you have to take a step back from your career, do it, because it will continue to go downhill. If it's a burnout, here's a good thought. If it's burnout, you take a step back, usually that helps. And if you tune in, right, usually that helps. If it's dysregulation, you're going to step back from your career, you're going to have a break, and then you're going to come back in, and it's going to come right back, and it's going to come harder and stronger than it was before. So time can help, certainly. Switching to being out of that work environment, that culture, can definitely help. So as a bonus to our transitioning service members, you are at least getting out of that culture that has somewhat, in a way, not done you well, right? And so we're transitioning to a civilian culture, and we got to learn, what do we shed here? Because I know a ton of people are super intimidated to take off the uniform, so to speak. However, there's a whole lot. We're taking you out of the military, not the military out of you. It's as much or as little as you want it. The community is strong, and that's the great thing here. Leaning into things like the community, the veteran community, utilizing, not all of the cultural aspects of the military were bad. It's a community, honestly, like I've never met, and I feel very honored to have been, you guys let me in, and I greatly appreciate that. So here's something, the prevention piece, the kind of, I think the reason we.
And this is important, because if we don't recognize that we have it and we go into a civilian job, we're going to recreate, because it's a habit, right? We take things on, we nug through.
Oh, yeah.
It's that habit piece. And if we're not careful, we'll recreate it on the outside, just like we had it on the inside. And then you'll wonder, why in the heck did I retire? Or transition, whatever, separate, right? Go ahead,
Right.
Trisha.
So what you're looking at here is a big piece of prevention and or intervention. I do the intervention piece, so this is just your basics, which you're going to go back to basics. Okay, you're going to drink water. If you don't like water, put lemon in it. That's what I used to get drinking water. I hated it. I literally only had soda and caffeine. It was toxically unhealthy, I understand, but we're all work in progress. Eat whole foods throughout the day. Part of this process, and again, this is a longer discussion, but if you only eat every 8 hours, you're causing your insulin to spike. If your insulin spikes, you're stressed. It causes your entire system to go into fight, flight, freeze. And if your system's already dysregulated, it stays in that, and then you're just adding fuel to a fire. So eat throughout the day. And I cannot stress this enough. Sleep, have a bedtime, have a cutoff point. There will always be more to do, always. Whether that's family, work, school, etc., right? And I hate to say it, but you are replaceable in work. I apologize, but I don't, because you got to know your enemy, right? So have a bedtime, have a cutoff point. Tune in. Again, resisting, part of the mind culture. Sorry, somebody's talking. I can't see it. Somebody have a question?
And somebody made a good comment, eating right is hard when you're fatigued, but it's something.
100%. And so again, these are things that drive this kind of cycle, right? I'm bone tired, Trisha, so I'm going to get fast food. Get that. At least you're eating though. And so again, sometimes we have to pick and choose. Subway, okay? It's not your hamburger, but it's a whole lot better than some of your other options. tuning back in, resisting military mind culture, and that piece of, pain is weakness leaving the body, drive forward, press on, unless you're the SOF and are learning new practices. Where do you feel tension? These are questions I want you guys to ask. And this is what I teach, is how you tune back in. How do you recognize where you're tight and where's tension in your body? It might feel really strange, but it says a lot about what you're going through. And then reassessing your why. Why are you even doing what you're doing? What do you want to do? So much of my time is spent with guys and girls and just people in general saying, I don't want you guys to feel pushed into project management or IT. There is so much more out there, but that's what's pushed at you guys. And I can't understand it for the life of me. I want the second part of your life to be so much better than the first. Very few people get to finish a career and start another one. So we're going to talk, if you work with me, we're going to talk about what's your why and what's important, because what was important in your military career is different now. And that can be absolutely terrifying. However, it is also very exciting. It also has opportunity. And honestly, I know kind of the sea of the world is my oyster is quite overwhelming. And it is, because again, you've been told what to do, when to do it, how to dress, how to shave, how to put your hair in a bun. I mean, the whole nine, right? Regulation techniques. Well, before I get there, healthy outlets. Okay. I want you to bring fun back. I'm gonna offer a series on fun because I need it too. But bring fun back into your life, kind of like Matt was saying. Golf. Do something that's just for you. It doesn't have to be hours or days. I think people think when I say this, like, oh, you got to go on a girls' trip, like a weekend, like all yourself. No, don't have to. You can take a shower. You can have a healthy meal. You can go play golf. You can go for a walk. Walking actually forces your brain to move into the parasympathetic nervous system. It's a great thing. Movement in general. Say no. That's why my little hand is X'd out. It's an amazing response. I work on it too. I'm also a work in progress. Have an end time, as I've said before. There's always more. And, start small for yourself. If you're drinking water and you start with a bedtime, I'm happy. Truly. You got to say no to say yes. Yes to the rest of your life. No to this one thing. Applying regulation techniques. I call them pregnancy breaths. So these are just two. I have my own vetted list of techniques and methods that you can do, whether you're in the middle of a battlefield, at your desk, at your family's event. You don't want people to know you're like coping, right? Pregnancy breaths, I nicknamed them that. They're diaphragmatic breaths. If you guys probably have heard of them, then you've heard of them probably in that way. The reason why I call them pregnancy breaths, it's a fail-proof way for you to know you're doing it correctly. If you breathe and your stomach protrudes like it's pregnant, you're doing it correctly. Just doing that alone forces your entire nervous system into the calming parasympathetic nervous system. Really? So you're literally forcing your body just by breathing to calm down and say, hey, hold on, we don't need fight, flight, freeze right now. We don't need it. Calm down. My favorite thing is the 2-minute feel drill. So this is basically, you're going to sit in the floor. Because why do I say the floor? Well, it's because you're not in front of a screen, most likely, and you're not in the middle of your family or chaos. And you're going to set your alarm to 2 minutes. Now, this is not meditation. I'm not asking you to get spiritual or call on anything, but I'm just asking you to cease doing. You're not going to try and do anything for those 2 minutes, but you're not going to block anything either. So you're just going to let your body, you're just going to say, okay, body, you've got 2 minutes. Whatever you need to feel, feel. I'm not going to block you. I'm not going to put a cap on you. And then when those 2 minutes go off, your alarm's going to sound. You're going to get up and you're going to return to your day. So you're training your body. It has an outlet. We will make time for you. We're not just going to continue to do this number and stuff it in, that you will get it out. Thoughts, questions?
How
Oh,
many
and
of
boiled
those-
potatoes.
How many of those have people tried successfully or unsuccessfully?
Boiled potatoes is new.
I still
Yeah, we'll
practice
get-
breathing. I did it today, just stepped away from the desk and did some of
Nice.
that diaphragm breathing. And then also there's one where you follow your pinky and your fingers and breathe up and down with that.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's the foolproof way. And the reason why I only call it pregnancy breaths now is because, you know, so many people are naturally breathing from your chest. If you're in fight, flight, freeze, we've all seen somebody have a panic attack. Their chest is up and down and up and down. That's because this is fight, flight, freeze. If you can get someone to breathe from their diaphragm, protrude their stomach out, you're forcing their body to say it's okay.
Have you heard of the book Boundaries by Dr. Henry Cloud? Does that help?
Oh yeah. Boundaries can certainly help. I mean, you know, I'm a big proponent of do what you can, right? We all need better boundaries, especially the helping professionals need to be able to say no. Again, I suffer with it. I'm also a work in progress and I'm still in recovery from all of my stuff. So it's an active process, but it is possible. And I mean, I had no idea the journey I would go on and that I'm still on. And if it wasn't for the diet, and I had to get to a medicated level. So I will say the word of caution is sometimes you are so dysregulated, it's hormonal and it's a cortisol level and an epinephrine issue. I am not a medical doctor, so if you ever do reach out to me, I will let you know if I think that's beyond my scope of practice, because I have limitations. I'm not about to say I don't know something or I know something I don't know. However, usually what I find is unless you've had a very similar experience, nearly identical to mine, and you're getting through your everyday, even if it's very difficult, then usually we can reset that and you don't have to feel that way. So
Yeah.
Any questions before I
Very
kind of
nice.
share what I do and wrap it up?
Trisha, hopefully this doesn't get,
Go
oh,
ahead.
sorry. I was gonna say, hopefully this doesn't get too far down the rabbit hole, but I was thinking as you were talking, is this like a neural pathway kind of thing? Because we talk about like when our brain intention, like when we get in a car, right? Our brain creates a shortcut to be able to drive, so we don't have to rethink every time how to drive the car. But as you're talking, I'm like, is this a neural pathway that's basically because you talked about brain trauma, it creates that neural pathway. So instead of going down a normal path like we might normally go down, we continue to go down that path where all the cortisol and all that stuff goes through our system. Is that what I'm hearing and understanding? It's basically we've created a new neural pathway where our brain's shortcutting, unfortunately, in a negative way. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah, it does. It does. Hi, sweetie. And honestly, so basically, yes and no. So it's creating a bunch of differences. You're getting gray matter. You're getting circuits that you have not had. It's forcing your brain, kind of like I think you're saying, Scotty, down this fight, flight, freeze stuckness as to what it's always doing. So instead of taking maybe the roundabout way, right, you're going the one way you know on repeat. And therefore, your body's panicking. Interesting fact, we're the only animal, so to speak, that's mind and body are separate. Everything else, if the body's tanked, the mind's tanked. If the mind's awful, the body's awful. It's one system. So just to tell you kind of how strange this truly is, there's a book called The Body Keeps the Score that goes through so much of just how your body has gone through every trauma, every event in your entire life that you have. But why do we then just focus on the mind? The body went through it. How's that working out? Well, it's probably not, but that's not your fault, right? So I will share kind of my screen here and what I do. Because one thing we wanted to do is make sure you knew how you can get a hold of Trisha and what kind of things she does. And maybe you want to reach out to her if you're feeling any of this kind of stuff. If any of this resonates with you, this is a great resource right now in front of you to say, hey, Trisha, I may need some help. Let's talk about this. So back to you, Trisha. I appreciate you being able to help folks. Yeah, so I nicknamed myself a stressalist because I deal with stress. I'll tell you guys a funny story briefly. I was starting to have problems with my eyes within the past 6 months. This was new to me. I go to the eye doctor, and literally the oh gosh, what's it called? It's not ophthalmologist, is it? Sorry, my brain is short in here. Optometrist, thank you. Says your eyes are stuck, and I'm like, what do you mean they're stuck? They're stressed. They're stuck in stress, and I just lost it laughing. And this is just in the past like 6 months. So I got to the level, even my eyeballs were just stuck and overwhelmed. So what do? I'm going to chat with you for free. We're gonna have a conversation about what your signs symptoms are. I'm gonna plan how to reset that, give you access to tools that, again, make your body go into parasympathetic calming mode and say, hey, body, we don't need that right now. I started a veteran group for veterans in transition that's free every other Tuesday from 7 to 8 p.m. And the group's called Vetted. You will find it. This QR code goes to my website, and my email's there at the bottom. The new training that I am offering, or new group for Vetted, is how to learn the culture. Again, kind of like we were talking throughout this, is that cultural shift. What do I need to shed as I move into civilian life? A lot of my guys and service members have been shocked through their skill bridge or through their internship, and say, this is a whole different world. People don't care, etc. So I don't want you guys to be too shocked. And then key trainings and education for military members to let people know what this thing is. And that way, again, my goal is for leaders to know and work with leaders so that I can do trainings and education on how to prevent this whole thing. So we can actually build leaders, because our leaders are actually calibrated and reset. And then, this happens in business as well, as I said, with CEOs and things like that, and your business gets stuck. So I work on that. And then speaker, podcaster as well. And last but not least, so there are 7 seats left in the Culture Reset group. It's basically going through how you're no longer this machine, and we're just going to tune things out. However, not all our training is useless. So you're going to go through what to keep, what will serve you, and what will not. Any questions, comments?
Thanks for making that available to the group. That's going to be important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we appreciate you being here tonight, Trisha, because as we said,
Yes, we do.
This is an important topic, and we have gone through it in the military, and we've nugged through it. We've put up with it. We've compartmentalized it. I said a lot of different words, and there comes a point where if you don't deal with it, it will deal with you. And,
it will, and that's what mine did. It said, nope, we're not doing anything anymore. And so it was a long one, but it is. The good news is it doesn't have to be this way, right? So before we go down a super dark rabbit hole, I want to stop this thing. So
yeah. And one last thought about military transition roundtable. One thing we do is the DISC assessment. You get to learn a little bit about your personality. And I know I'm an SC. I call it a peacemaker, but S's, 67% of the world is S's. And guess what? We don't say no. We don't want to have conflict. So we don't want to tell the boss, no, I can't do that, right? You don't want to walk into the boss and say, I can't do this anymore. That just creates conflict. So we end up holding it inside, and it works totally against us. And I'm not saying that's the only personality that does it, but that's a characteristic of the S. So one thing we do in MTR is we help people understand their personality and why they behave the way they do. And boy, that just unlocks so much for me, and it might unlock a bunch of stuff for you too. So again, if you want to learn more about Military Transition Roundtable, get back to Matt or I. One thing we're going to do out of this is we're going to send this recording within the next week out to everybody who signed up. So you guys will get this, so you can go back and listen, because we want you to have this to refer to. It'll be off on probably a link off on our Military Transition Roundtable YouTube page. And there's some other ones out that way. Matt, anything we forgot that you want to bring up as we close out?
Yeah, real quick thing. Don and I always welcome LinkedIn connections, and you can find us that way. I put my my given name, which is DMatt, and I did that because I found I was not the only match here on the on the LinkedIn planet. So please reach out to me. That way we can have another conversation about MTR and what we offer. You've got people like Kelly who can attest to the kind of things that we do, and you know, you're gonna find that we have a different approach to transition than other people, which is we're gonna help you look at some of the situations that you're facing, and you're gonna say, "Hey, I'm not the only guy who's got that problem." So we'd love to have you. We'd love to work with you.
Yep.
Just feel free to drop us a line. We've got your information here, but you know, if you want to be proactive, reach out to us tonight. You know, like it's like in my DMatt, Don Gleason, Don L. Gleason, by the way.
Don L. There's 67 Don Gleasons. Would you believe that? But there's only one Don L.
That's
Gleason.
right, because I told you to put that middle initial in.
Yep.
Oh,
All right.
all gotta play the connection game. Thank you, Don. Thank you, Matt, for having me, and all of you that have come. Truly appreciate it.